Her brother called her a fraud, until 3 military officers knocked on the door. Elena Caldwell adjusted her understated taupe blazer, smoothing it with care, before stepping through the heavy mahogany door of her family's sprawling colonial home in upstate New York. The scent of polished wood and her mother's lilac perfume greeted her, a sensory anchor to a childhood that felt both distant and ever-present. Elena had mastered the art of blending into the Caldwell family's expectations: simple clothing, a single pearl necklace, and a practiced smile that masked the weight of secrets she carried. For 18 years, she had walked a tightrope between her covert life and the warmth of these family gatherings, each step calculated to protect both her mission and the people she loved. The dining room was a cacophony of familiar voices: Aunt Beatrice chattering about the new art gallery in town, Uncle Raymond debating trade policies with Cousin Noah, and her mother, Lillian, ferrying platters of her renowned coq au vin from the kitchen with practiced grace. "There's our enigmatic Elena," her brother Samuel called from across the table, his county sheriff's uniform still crisp from a long day's shift. His voice carried a familiar blend of affection and suspicion, a tone that had grown sharper over the years. "Still keeping your fancy government job under wraps, huh? What's it this time? Filing papers for the pencil pushers in D.C. Elena slid into her usual chair, the one facing the bay window with a view of her mother's meticulously tended hydrangea garden, now bathed in the soft glow of twilight. "You know how it is, Sam," she said lightly, her voice smooth from years of deflection. "Reports, meetings, the usual bureaucratic grind." The lie was second nature, refined over nearly 2 decades of covert service. Her grandmother, Clara, 87 and sharp as a blade, reached for her hand, her grip firm despite her age. "Leave her be, Samuel," Clara said, her voice gentle but resolute. "Elena, doing work that matters, that's more than most can claim." But Samuel wasn't satisfied. His fingers tapped a restless rhythm on his wine glass, his jaw tightening as he leaned forward. "Had an interesting case at the station today," he said, slicing into his chicken with unnecessary force. "We were talking about fraud, people parading around with titles they didn't earn, flashing badges they never deserved." The room grew quieter, the clink of cutlery fading as family members sensed the shift in atmosphere. Lillian paused mid-step, a serving dish in her hands, her brow creasing with concern. "Samuel, what are you getting at?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm saying Elena been lying to us," Samuel declared, his voice rising with conviction. "I made some calls, checked some databases. There's no record of an Elena Caldwell in any federal or military system I could access." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick manila folder, dropping it onto the table with a thud. "I've got proof she's been faking it, impersonating a government official, maybe even a military officer. That swanky loft in Manhattan, that high-end SUV. How does she afford those on a desk jockey's salary?" The dining room fell into a stunned silence. Noah's teenage daughter, Sophie, looked up from her phone, her eyes wide with curiosity. Aunt Beatrice's fork hovered Medea, her gossip forgotten. Lillian sank into her chair, her face pale as porcelain. "Samuel, please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Not here, not like this." But Samuel was beyond reason, years of doubt and resentment boiling over. "She's been playing us for fools, Mom," he said, his voice thick with betrayal. "Living some double life, maybe stealing government funds, selling secrets for all we know." He stood, his hand brushing the handcuffs on his belt, his posture rigid with authority. "Elena Caldwell, you're under arrest for impersonating a federal officer and theft of government property." Elena's pulse quickened, but her training held her expression steady, her face a mask of calm. Years of operating in high-stakes environments had taught her to control every reaction, to never let emotion betray her position. "Sam, you don't understand what you're doing," she said quietly, her voice carrying a weight that made Sophie lower her phone entirely. Clara's hand tightened around hers, the old woman's eyes blazing with a mix of fear and unwavering loyalty. Before Samuel could respond, a sharp, authoritative knock echoed from the front door, its force reverberating through the house. The sound was unmistakable, not the casual tap of a neighbor or the hurried knock of a delivery driver, but the deliberate cadence of official business. Uncle Raymond glanced around, his voice low. "Expecting someone?" Lillian started toward the door, but Samuel held up a hand, his chest puffing with self-assurance. "I'll handle it," Probably backup, I called it in earlier. He strode to the door and opened it, revealing three figures in immaculate military dress uniforms, their presence commanding the room before they even stepped inside. The lead was a tall man with close-cropped grey hair, his chest adorned with a constellation of medals that made Samuel's sheriff's badge look like a trinket. "Deputy Caldwell," the man said, his voice carrying the crisp authority of someone accustomed to instant obedience. "I'm Colonel James Whittaker, accompanied by Major Olivia Bennett and Captain Diego Alvarez. We are here regarding your allegations of fraudulent military credentials." Elena closed her eyes for a fleeting moment, a quiet acknowledgement that the collision of her two worlds was inevitable. She had always known this day might come, when the carefully constructed walls between her covert life and her family would crumble. She had hoped to control the terms, but Samuel's jealousy and need for answers had forced her hand. "Yes, sir," Samuel said, his voice gaining confidence as he gestured toward the dining room. "My sister, in there. I was about to place her under arrest for impersonation when you arrived." Officers stepped into the dining room, their polished boots echoing on the hardwood floor. The family sat frozen, the weight of their presence overwhelming. These were not local reservists or ceremonial guards. They were career military, their bearing honed by decades of command and combat. Colonel Whittaker's eyes swept the room before settling on Elena. For a brief moment, a silent understanding passed between them, a recognition of shared duty, of sacrifices no one else in the room could fathom. "Ma'am," he said, and then, with a precision that silenced the room, he snapped to attention, his officers mirroring him instantly. "General Caldwell." The words landed like a thunderclap. Aunt Beatrice gasped, her wine glass tipping precariously. Uncle Raymond's fork clattered to his plate. Noah's jaw dropped, and Sophie's phone slipped from her hands, forgotten. Samuel stood rooted in the doorway, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and a dawning horror. "General," he stammered, "that's impossible. She's my sister. She's just Elena." "Deputy Caldwell," Colonel Whittaker said, his voice cutting through Samuel's protests like a blade, "you are addressing General Elena Caldwell, recipient of the Distinguished Service Cross, the Legion of Merit, and the Defense Superior Service Medal. She has served with distinction in classified operations across 5 continents and holds one of the highest security clearances in the United States military." The silence that followed was deafening. Lillian pressed a hand to her chest, her eyes brimming with tears. Clara's gaze shone with pride, not shock, as if she had always suspected more to Elena's story. "That's not possible," Samuel repeated, his voice faltering. "I checked every database. I called contacts. There's no record of her." "Of course there isn't," Major Bennett said, her tone sharp with restrained anger. "General Caldwell's service record is classified at levels far beyond your clearance. Her existence in military files is compartmentalized to protect national security." Samuel's face drained of color, the full weight of his actions settling over him. "She never told us," he whispered. "She never said anything." "She couldn't," Captain Alvarez added, his voice cold and precise. "General Caldwell has spent the last 18 years safeguarding critical operations and assets that protect this nation. Her secrecy was not a choice, it was a mandate." Elena finally spoke, her voice quiet but resonant with authority. "Sam, when you made those calls, when you dug into my record, you triggered security protocols. You compromised active operations. People died because of your actions." Colonel Whittaker stepped forward, his presence commanding absolute attention. "Deputy Caldwell, you are hereby ordered to cease all inquiries into General Caldwell's service record. You will report to federal authorities tomorrow morning for a full debriefing. Your actions have potentially jeopardized national security assets." Samuel's legs wavered, and he gripped the doorframe for support. "I was just trying to protect the family," he said, his voice barely audible. "I thought you were lying, Elena. I thought you were a fraud." Elena rose slowly, her movement prompting the officers to straighten instinctively. For the first time, her family saw her as she truly was, not the reserved sister who dodged questions, but a general who had commanded operations in the world's most dangerous regions. "The fraud," she said, locking eyes with Samuel, "was me pretending to be just your sister." The dining room transformed into a surreal command center, with Colonel Whitaker standing at attention while Elena's posture shifted, straighter, more authoritative, as if shedding years of civilian disguise. "At ease, Colonel," she said quietly, and the officers relaxed in perfect unison, a simple exchange that sent another shockwave through the family. They were witnessing their quiet Elena command officers who outranked Samuel by miles. Samuel stumbled back, hitting the wall, his face a kaleidoscope of emotions. "This isn't real," he muttered. "You're my little sister. You used to hide under the table during fireworks. You cried when Dad sold your old bike." "I still hate fireworks," Elena said, a faint smile softening her words. "And I still miss that bike sometimes." The admission grounded the moment, a flicker of the sister they knew amidst the stranger she had become. Clara was the first to speak, her voice trembling but clear. "How long, Elena? How long have you carried this alone?" 18 years, Grandma," Elena replied, her voice heavy with the weight of missed birthdays, unspoken truths, and the constant vigilance required to keep her worlds separate. "Since I was 21. Uncle Raymond cleared his throat, his accountant's mind grappling with the implications. "That college you went to, West Point, wasn't it? That wasn't just a degree, was it?" "United States Military Academy," Colonel Whitaker interjected. "General Caldwell graduated summa cum laude, top of her class, and was immediately recruited for elite intelligence operations. Her leadership and strategic acumen were unmatched." Aunt Beatrice, who had spent years speculating about Elena's mysterious lifestyle, looked stricken. "All those times we wondered how you afforded that apartment, that car. We thought you might be mixed up in something shady." "My housing is military provided," Elena explained, her tone patient but firm. "The car is a security measure. Every question you've had, every suspicion, was part of maintaining my cover." Samuel pushed off the wall, his sheriff's training warring with his emotional collapse. "A cover from your own family." Major Bennett stepped forward, her expression stern. "General Caldwell's identity was classified to protect her and her operations in hostile territories. The fewer who knew, the safer she and you were." Lillian spoke for the first time since the officers arrived, her voice barely a whisper. "You were in danger all these years, and we didn't know." The words hung like a prayer, fragile and heavy. Elena met her mother's gaze, and for a moment the general faded, replaced by a daughter who had shielded her family with lies. "4 tours in Syria," she said softly, 3 in Iraq. Classified missions in 9 countries I can't name. I've been shot 3 times, survived 2 bombings, and spent 7 months in a black site that officially doesn't exist." Aunt Beatrice gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Sophie stared, her tablet forgotten, seeing her aunt anew. "The scar on your wrist," Clara whispered, realization dawning. "You said it was a kitchen burn." "Shrapnel in Damascus," Elena corrected. "The kitchen story was easier." Samuel's voice cracked. "Why didn't you trust us? Why didn't you trust me?" Colonel Whitaker's expression hardened. "Because of exactly what happened tonight, Deputy. Instead of asking your sister directly, you went behind her back, made unauthorized inquiries, and compromised critical operations." "What operations?" Samuel demanded, clinging to his fading authority. Captain Alvarez consulted his tablet, his tone clipped. 8 intelligence assets across 4 countries were compromised due to your inquiries, Deputy Caldwell. 3 are confirmed dead. 5 are missing, presumed captured or killed. The words struck Samuel like blows. He staggered, his face ashen. "No, that's not. I was just asking questions." "You asked questions about a classified general's service record," Major Bennett said icily. "Those questions triggered alerts that forced us to extract assets who had been embedded for years. Their blood is on your hands." Lillian's sobs broke the silence, deep and wrenching. "My baby," she whispered, "you've been fighting wars and I didn't know." "Mom," Elena began, starting to rise, but Lillian held up a trembling hand. "Let me process this." She wiped her eyes, clutching her napkin. "All those Christmases you missed, those work trips, you were deployed." "Christmas 2017, I was in Mosul," Elena said. "2019, coordinating a strike in Mali. Last Christmas, I was in a bunker in Kazakhstan, 2 miles from the border. Uncle Raymond leaned forward, his analytical mind racing. The federal investigation Samuel mentioned, that's real, isn't it? Very real, Colonel Whitaker confirmed. Deputy Caldwell will be suspended pending a full investigation into his unauthorized inquiries. Charges could range from obstruction of justice to treason. Treason, Samuel's voice was a whisper, his world unraveling. You compromised national security, Captain Alvarez said. 8 lives lost or unaccounted for. That's not an error, it's a catastrophic breach with global repercussions. Elena stood, her movement prompting the officers to stiffen out of respect. She walked to Samuel, her family watching every step. Sam, I know you thought you were protecting the family, you thought I was hiding something shameful, but you never asked me, you never gave me a chance to find a way to explain. Samuel looked at her, seeing the weight of her sacrifices, the scars, the strength, the resolve of a woman who had made life-or-death decisions in war zones. I'm sorry, he whispered. God, Elena, I'm so sorry, but apologies couldn't undo the damage. Elena's expression remained steady, forged in the crucible of countless impossible choices. Do you know who Asset Sparrow was, Sam? She asked, her voice clinical. He shook his head, eyes hollow. She was a 26-year-old journalist in Pyongyang, feeding us intel on missile programs for 4 years. She had a fiancé waiting for her. Your inquiries forced a rushed extraction. She was caught at the border. The room seemed to close in around Samuel. Aunt Beatrice covered her mouth, tears welling. Uncle Raymond's face was grim. Asset Kestrel, Elena continued, was a Yemeni engineer documenting drone strikes for the UN. He was set to testify in Geneva. Your calls triggered his extraction. His cover was blown. He was executed. Stop, Samuel pleaded, his voice breaking. Asset Raven, Elena pressed on, relentless, was a Ukrainian hacker infiltrating Russian cyber networks. 5 years of work, Sam. She's been dark for 96 hours, likely tortured or dead. She turned to the table, her family staring in horror. You want to know why I couldn't tell you? This is why. One person's distrust, one moment of reckless curiosity, and 8 people paid with their lives. Clara's voice was faint. You've carried this alone all these years. Not alone, Elena said, glancing at the officers. I had my team, people who understood the stakes, but I never had the luxury of being just Elena, of trusting my family to respect boundaries they didn't understand. Samuel slumped against the wall, his uniform now a mockery of authority. I thought you were the threat, he said. I thought I was the protector. You were protecting your pride, Elena said bluntly. You couldn't stand that your younger sister might outrank you, might have a life you couldn't control. Major Bennett checked her tablet. General, we need to brief your family on security protocols. Elena nodded. Everyone here is now a potential security risk. Federal agents will visit within 48 hours. You'll sign non-disclosure agreements and be monitored. Any breach will result in charges. Uncle Raymond, ever pragmatic, asked, what kind of monitoring? Phone taps, email surveillance, periodic interviews, Captain Alvarez explained. Standard for civilians exposed to classified information. Noah spoke up, his voice unsteady. For how long? As long as General Caldwell's operations continue, Colonel Whitaker said. The risk doesn't vanish because the secret's out. Lillian looked up, her eyes red but resolute. What about Samuel? That depends, Colonel Whitaker said, glancing at Elena. The extent of the damage, his cooperation, and the General's recommendation. All eyes turned to Elena. She held Samuel's future, his career, his freedom in her hands. The family waited, knowing her decision would reshape their bonds. Samuel will face the full consequences, she said, her voice unwavering. I won't recommend leniency. Samuel's knees buckled, and he slid to the floor, head in his hands. Elena, please, I have a wife, kids. So did Asset Sparrow, Elena replied. So did Asset Kestrel. So did the 3 assets in Asia whose covers were blown because of you. Clara stood, her frailty evident but her voice firm. Elena, he's your brother. And those 8 people were someone's family, Elena said. They trusted me to keep them safe, and Samuel's actions got them killed. Colonel Whittaker cleared his throat. General, command recommends immediate relocation due to the breach. How long do I have? Elena asked. 72 hours, Whittaker replied. Lillian's voice broke. Where will you go? I can't tell you, Elena said gently. I never could, now you know why. As the officers prepared to leave, taking Samuel for questioning, the Caldwells sat in the wreckage of their shattered assumptions. The coq au vin had gone cold, the wine untouched, the family's illusions in tatters. 2 years later, General Elena Caldwell stood on the balcony of her new apartment in Arlington, Virginia, the Potomac River glinting under a setting sun. Her life was no longer a facade. She was free to be the general she had always been. Her phone buzzed with a text from Major Bennett, now Olivia, inviting her to a team dinner. These were her true family, colleagues who understood the cost of duty, the necessity of secrets, the sanctity of trust. Samuel's trial had concluded 8 months prior. He received 18 years in federal prison for compromising national security, the judge citing the deaths of 8 assets and decades of disrupted operations. Elena had attended the sentencing, watching from the back as her brother's life unraveled, a consequence of his inability to trust her. Uncle Raymond had visited her 3 times, pleading for leniency. He's family, Elena, he'd said. Family forgives. But Elena had learned that family was earned, not owed. Aunt Beatrice had been harsher, storming into Elena's office with accusations. You've destroyed him, she'd sobbed. You've torn us apart. How can you be so heartless? But Elena knew heartlessness was sacrificing assets for mission success, not holding a brother accountable for preventable deaths. The Caldwells tried to rebuild, holding dinners without her, whispering about their famous relative while under federal surveillance. Elena received monthly reports on their activities, their attempts to process the revelation that their quiet sister was a decorated general. Lillian's letters arrived weekly, filled with apologies and pride. I failed you, one read. I should have trusted you without needing answers. I'm proud, even if I don't understand. But Elena had needed that trust during the 18 years she balanced covert missions with family charades, when every lie was a shield for their safety. Her phone rang. Clara. Elena, I want to tell the world about my granddaughter, the general, her grandmother said, her voice frail but determined. I want to brag like grandmothers do. My records classified, Grandma, Elena said, but you can say you're proud, that's enough. I'm sorry I didn't trust you, Clara said, her voice breaking. Elena paused, the river's current steady below. I know, Grandma, but I don't know if I can trust you again. I understand, Clara said, but I'm here if you're ready to try. Elena ended the call and prepared for dinner with her team, her chosen family. They'd share stories, strategize over wine, and trust each other without question. In her reflection on the glass door, she saw General Caldwell, resolute, unapologetic, at peace. The Caldwell name was her past. Her future belonged to those who earned her trust. Elena's journey resonates with the power of trust, duty, and the complex ties of family. Her story unveils the cost of secrecy, the pain of betrayal, and the strength to choose accountability over sentiment. For 18 years, she carried the weight of national security while maintaining a facade of normalcy, a sacrifice her family couldn't comprehend until it was too late. Samuel's actions, driven by jealousy and a need for control, shattered not only his own life, but the lives of 8 others who depended on Elena's protection. Her refusal to shield him from consequences wasn't cruelty, it was justice, a testament to the lives lost and the missions compromised. The Caldwell family's unraveling reveals a universal truth. Trust is the foundation of any bond, familial or otherwise. Elena's secrecy wasn't a rejection of her family, but a shield to protect them, a burden she bore alone until Samuel's distrust forced her truth into the open. The arrival of Colonel Whittaker and his officers was a turning point, exposing not just Elena's true identity, but the fragility of her family's faith in her. Their shock, their apologies, their attempts to rebuild came too late to mend what was broken. Elena's choice to prioritize duty over blood reflects a profound understanding of loyalty, not as blind allegiance to family, but as a commitment to those who earn trust through actions, not genetics. Her relocation to Arlington marked a new chapter, one where she could live authentically as General Caldwell. The dinners with her team, filled with laughter and mutual respect, offered the belonging her family could not. Clara's call, filled with regret and a desire to reconnect, highlighted the chasm between Elena's past and present. While her grandmother's love was sincere, it couldn't erase the years of doubt or the lives lost to Samuel's recklessness. Elena's response, cautious, guarded, yet open to possibility, reflects the delicate balance of healing and self-preservation. This story challenges us to reflect on the nature of family. Is it defined by shared blood or shared values? Can bonds survive when trust is broken? Elena's journey suggests that true family is chosen, built on mutual respect and understanding, not demanded through obligation. Her strength in setting boundaries, in holding Samuel accountable, underscores that love sometimes means letting go of those who cannot accept us as we are. In finding her team, her true family, Elena discovered a home where her sacrifices were honored, her secrets respected, and her trust reciprocated. If Elena's story moved you, like this post and share it with those who value trust and accountability. Subscribe for more tales of duty, betrayal, and the search for belonging. Comment below, what would you do in Elena's place? Can family recover from such a betrayal? Share your thoughts on forgiveness, loyalty, and the true meaning of family. Elena's journey teaches us that the deepest relationships are forged in trust and respect, not obligation. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is releasing those who cannot love us authentically, allowing us to find the family we were meant to have.